All right, good morning, everyone, and welcome to the March open house sessions here at Carleton University, Canada's capital university, on the traditional unceded territories of the Algonquin Nation here in Ottawa, Canada, in the heart of the entire nation. Good morning to everyone. We are absolutely thrilled that you took the time and energy to join us in our wonderful session today. My name is Jaleel Alab, and I'm a recruitment coordinator here at Carleton University. Just as we're beginning, I'll kind of give you some information on how you can navigate our AirMeet platform. Throughout the duration of this session, you'll notice that on the right-hand side of your screen, you have the Q&A tab. So if you have questions at the end of the presentation, feel free to ask your questions in the Q&A tab on the right-hand side at the end as well. If you have any other information, you'll be able to note the chat tab again on your right-hand side, where we will be posting some important links if you want to stay in touch with us or learn more about the biology program as well. We are joined today by Professor Christina Davey and Professor Kathy Cunningham to give you more information on the program. Biology is the study of life, and right now this session is alive and teeming with action. So without further ado, Professor Cunningham, whenever you're ready, you can definitely get us started. Thank you so much.
Perfect. Thank you, Jaleel. And thank you, everybody, for joining. I'm going to share my screen with you right now. And so Dr. Davey and I have a presentation to give you to tell you a little bit about the Department of Biology and a little bit about ourselves as well. And then we'll have an opportunity for questions at the end. So before I start, I think the most important thing for me when I'm talking to people who are looking at a biology degree is that we're really lucky in Canada that we can get a good biology education from a lot of different places in a lot of different provinces. And so right now, I think the question that you might want to be asking is, why Carleton? And throughout this presentation, we're going to talk about why Carleton. But the two things I want you to take home is that we have this really wonderful community. And it's a community that cares. We care about our students. We want our students to do well. We care about each other in the department. And then we have this really cool, diverse array of researchers. So you're going to get exposed to all sorts of different things. So you may be a little uncertain in where your career path might take you, and you might become inspired by one of our really amazing professors. Now, one of the things we do when we teach is we try to interact with our students. And so we're going to use Poll Everywhere today. We have a couple of slides. So if you have a cell phone handy or an extra screen on your computer, you can go to the site pollev.com/CatherineCull937. And it'll ask you to add a name, but you don't have to add a name. You can just skip that part. And then you can tell us how you're feeling today. And we use this kind of teaching method in our classes to allow our students to engage without necessarily making them directly engage. So let's say you're in a class with 300 students. It might be a bit intimidating to put up your hand and ask a question. But when it's this kind of anonymous polling, we can easily ask you how you're feeling. So I'm going to tell you how I'm feeling today. So I'm feeling a little bit of not so good and a little bit of great. The reason why I'm feeling a little not so good is because this morning my slides weren't working. And then I got them working. So that's why I feel really great. And I feel really great because I'm talking to all of you. So this is one of the ways we can interact with students. So you can just plot where you're feeling. Most people are feeling good. Somebody's feeling a little sleepy. Maybe 11 a.m. is a little too early for you. Lots of people are feeling good. I love that. We'll keep the energy going. So who are we? Well, I'm Dr. Catherine Cunningham. I'm an assistant professor. I started at Carleton in 2019, so I'm relatively new. Most of my time has been spent during the pandemic teaching, so it's been a very different experience for me. I have a website that describes my research as well as my email address there if you want to ask me questions outside of this session. I teach two courses right now. So Biology 2104, which is Introductory Genetics, and Biology 4103, which is Population Genetics. Introductory Genetics, most students take it. So if you do decide to come to Carleton, you'll definitely be seeing me in second year. And I'm going to slide it over to Dr. Christina Davey, and she can introduce herself.
Hi, good morning. I'm Dr. Christina Davey. I'm also an assistant professor at Carleton, and I started in the Department of Biology actually last September, so I'm really new here. And before that, I was working as a research scientist with the Government of Ontario, and I'm really excited to bring some of what I learned in that government science position into my teaching and my research at Carleton as well. And there's a website there if you're interested in what our lab does. For teaching, I, at the moment, am teaching a course called Ecosystems and Environmental Change in the winter, which I'm pretty excited about because we get to take a really global look at the big drivers of environmental change. And we talk about things like climate change and pollution and invasive species and how those are modifying ecosystems all around the world. And then in the fall, I teach conservation biology, where we look at the same kinds of questions with a kind of different perspective. So in my lab, we're studying the impacts of rapid environmental changes, including things like habitat fragmentation and wildlife disease and invasive species, on small and declining wildlife populations. And we do this work with a whole range of different species. Can we just get the next slide? Thank you. But most of our focus at the moment is on reptiles and bats because both of those groups are quite heavily threatened by human activities. And so there are good systems to look at the effects of human activities on wildlife. And they're also accessible and small. We can get out in the field and get big sample sizes and answer some of our questions more easily than if we were working with something like polar bear or caribou. And we use a range of different methods. So we get out there just like this picture is showing you and work with the animals directly. And then we also collect samples that we bring back and analyze in the lab using genetic methods and maybe looking for pollutants in tissue samples and so on. Can we get the next one? Thank you. And a lot of our focus lately has been on wildlife diseases and things like white nose syndrome, which is a disease that's affecting bat populations. This is an undergraduate student named Einstein who worked on our bat project last summer and helped us catch bats all across Eastern Ontario and collect a variety of different samples from them. We can also look for things like coronaviruses, not the one that causes COVID, but there's a whole range of native coronaviruses found in North American bats that we've only barely started to describe. So we're really interested in understanding the diversity of those viruses as well. I'm going to pass it back to Dr. Cullingham now.
Thank you. And my lab, it's called the Genomics of Plants, Pests, and Pathogens. And what we do in that lab is we use genetic information from individuals and populations to contribute to wildlife management. And we address all sorts of questions looking at connectivity of animals, hybridization, disease spread, genetic variation, as well as disease resilience and resistance. And because I work on DNA, we work on all sorts of species. So my lab has worked on deer, raccoons, swift foxes, pine trees, you name it. If it has DNA, I'm going to study it, especially if there's a really exciting or interesting question. So that really drives my research. So with deer, we're looking at the spread of chronic wasting disease. With raccoons, I looked at the spread of raccoon rabies. Swift foxes, conservation, they were extirpated from Canada, then reintroduced. So how is that population doing? Are they healthy? Do they have lots of genetic diversity? And then the big project I'm working on right now is looking at pine trees and mountain pine beetle. And mountain pine beetle is a small insect pest from the west coast of Canada and the US. And it has slowly been moving into places like Alberta, and it has the potential to spread all the way here to Ontario. And so I'm using genetic methods to understand what makes trees maybe more or less resilient to the attack of the beetle, and what drives the beetle forward, what makes it successful in its movement. So I can do genetics on both things because I'm not focused on just one species. I like them all because they have DNA. So bags of DNA is how I see the world. So that's my research in a snapshot. So let's get back to you and why you might be doing a biology degree. And it really hasn't been a better time to be a biology student right now if you think of what's going on in the world. So we have these amazing new transformative techniques like Crispr. So we can, pinpoint genes that we might want to modify and actually be able to modify them. So there's lots of transformative techniques. There's lots of conversations around it. Should we do it? Shouldn't we do it? How do we do it? There's lots of advances in computing. So for example, 70% of healthcare execs think that big data analytics skills are where you're going to get a job. So those types of bioinformatic skills that you can learn in a biology degree are really important. And just knowing the computer buttons to push isn't enough. You need to know the biology of the system to do both. And then we're seeing a lot of change in our world. So we've got global food security issues that are partly associated with climate change. How do we solve these really big problems? And at Carleton, we really want to contribute to that next generation who's going to be solving these big problems. So we want to make sure we're giving you guys the tools that we can solve these problems. And I didn't even talk about COVID. So, it's a really good time to be a biology student and have a biology education. So before I talk a little bit about our biology, I would like to get some feedback from you. And this is not a comprehensive list of the things we can learn in biology, but if some of these interest you or one of them in particular interests you, you can let me know through the polling, and then we can talk a little bit more about that potentially. So I'll wait for 10, 20 seconds for everybody to get on and log a couple of responses. I should set my timer. And the wonderful thing is that we've got people in our department who do all these things. Forestry, yes. Trees are super important. And that's one area that's near and dear to me. So we've got a tie right now between human health, physiology, and forestry, which is really, really great to see. So I'm going to move on and talk a little bit about what a biology degree looks like at Carleton. So we do have a lot of options in our undergraduate program. So you can start and just do a basic biology degree. You can do an honors degree, a general degree. You can major in it. And we also have concentrations. So we can do ecology, evolution, and behavior is one of our concentrations. Health science. So for those of you who are interested in, human health and physiology, that health science concentration might be a really good fit. Molecular and cellular biology. We have physiology as well as biodiversity, natural history, and conservation. So the forestry people might want to look at a concentration in that biodiversity, natural history section. So we've got a lot of options. And then we also have a couple of other degrees. So we have bioinformatics, we have biology and biotechnology. So those of you who have some good ideas and ways that we can improve our society with biotechnology, that's a really great program and lots of really great courses in that program. And then, of course, biochemistry and biotechnology combined and computational biochemistry. So there's lots of options for you when you get here. And if you're uncertain, you can start, in a more general degree and then specialize as you go. And here's some more of our programs: biology and physical geography, biology and earth sciences. So we can team up with some of our other departments and offer you courses in some of these other specialties. You can also do humanities and biology. So there's lots of opportunities for you to interact with biology, even if it's not directly. So what does a first year degree look like? What kind of courses are you going to take if you did decide to do a biology degree at Carleton? So you're going to have a common set of courses where most of you are taking these courses. And these include things like biology, chemistry, physics, and math. So we want to make sure you have a really good foundation in these subjects before we bring you to more advanced topics. And then, of course, there's really great arts and social science options because that's an important part of biology too. Beyond first year, as you get into your upper years, there's more opportunity to specialize. So here's an example of some of our third and fourth year courses. You could take a course in animal behavior, landscape ecology, my favorite, population genetics, adaptations to extreme environments. We also have courses on cactus biology, fungal biology. So we have a lot of opportunity for hands-on work in these courses as well as in our first year courses. And that's one of the things we really want to emphasize is that, you might be taking these really large first year courses, but those first year courses have lab experience, which is really great. We're not just giving you knowledge, we're helping you develop skills. And some of our programs can be quite complex. So we have these lovely cheat sheets. You can find these on our website, but I'm just going to go through a couple of them here as examples. So this is, a biology honors degree at a glance. So in first year, as I said, you're going to take, a biology, chemistry, math, and then you're going to take one credit from this group. So 2 courses is 1 credit. And then in your second year, again, there'll be certain things that you need to take. So, foundational biology courses, my course, Introduction to Genetics, another good one, cellular biochemistry, microbiology, ecology, and then you have some choices in that degree. And then in your third year and fourth year, you get more choices and you get more specialized. So you could take bioinformatics and immunology, or you could take bioinformatics and current topics in biotechnology. So there's lots of options as you go. And the great thing is we have staff that, and professors that can help guide you throughout your term. This is what a bioinformatics degree would look like. It's a little bit different as you get into the second, third, and fourth year, but in the first year, it's pretty much the same, except you need to make sure you have your computer science or introduction to computer science. And so in that, when I say if you're not quite sure what you're interested when you first start, there's this opportunity to, refine your decisions as you go, because the first year is pretty much the same across our biology courses. And then with the bioinformatics, as I said, in that second, third, and fourth year, you're going to take more of those specialized courses. So, physical biochemistry, bioinformatics, evolutionary genetics, those types of courses that are going to be really important for that bioinformatics specialty. And then this is what a biology and biotechnology stream would look like. Again, the first year looks almost identical to our biology degree. And then in the second, third, and fourth year, that's when they start to differ. So we have our core courses in biology that you need to take in second year, but then you have all these choices as you go throughout. And so some of them you need to take to make sure you get that biotechnology tag, and some of them you need to take for that biology tag. So that's just a quick snapshot of what some of our programs would look like and what to expect in the courses you would take throughout your academic. So what does a biology degree mean for you? As I already said, we don't just want to transfer knowledge to you, we want to transfer skills. So studying biology at somewhere like Carleton will give you a lot of really important skills. And some of them are very, based in science, like experimental design, asking questions, critical thinking, drawing conclusions. And some of them are just really good skills to have going into the future. IT skills and computer literacy, time management, communication. All of those skills are important regardless of what type of job you want to pursue in the future. So a biology degree means that you get this really cool biological knowledge that's really important right now, but then you'll also get some skills going down the road that you don't necessarily have to take a career in biology for. You'll still have these really important skills. Of course, you'll want a career in biology because biology is really cool, but just in case. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Dr. Davey.
Thanks. I will say that one of the reasons that I was the most excited to join the faculty in biology at Carleton is that the faculty and staff in this department are really strongly committed to teaching, and that, like more than I have seen anywhere else. And I've worked in other great places, and that's a really exciting place to work because the joint emphasis on research and teaching by everybody means that students get the best possible education. And I think that that's true not only in terms of how good the lectures are or how clearly things are explained, but also that I find that everybody in the department really cares about students' well-being as well. And you can do your best science when you're also happy and healthy, right? So the combination is great. The staff in the department are involved in all sorts of really great outreach initiatives as well, which are really exciting. So this is Ed, who's one of the technicians in the department, who runs this amazing butterfly hatching scheme in the greenhouses in the Nesbitt building, which is the building that you saw on the first slide that has the greenhouses attached to it, those big glass pieces. And this provides an opportunity for students to work with the butterflies and also to participate in outreach events and learn more about how to communicate science effectively to a broad audience and about the biology of butterflies. And it all comes together, and it's really special. I want to show you some examples of the various faculty and what they work on. And this isn't everybody, obviously, because that would take us too long. But when Dr. Cullingham was talking about how at the end of a biology degree, you might do a final project, a thesis project, like a capstone project, where you work directly with a professor on a particular piece of science that is yours and your contribution to science, and you learn that whole process of developing a study from the beginning and working it through to the end, and sometimes, if it goes well, also publishing it in a journal. Making that work really well for you partly involves finding a faculty member whose research you're particularly passionate about so that you can get involved in that kind of research. So we want to show you some examples of the different specialties that the department has to offer. So this is Dr. Jane Yak, and her research group studies the evolution and function of acoustic communication systems. So how do different animals talk to each other, basically? And how do predators overhear that chatter and maybe capitalize on it by grabbing those animals as prey? And she uses behavior and neuroscience and genetics methods in this work. So this is just an example of a really cool paper that her group put out describing a new method of vocalization in caterpillars, which I will admit I did not even know vocalized. Dr. Bill Wilmore's lab studies the genetic underpinnings of responses to hypoxia. And hypoxia is just a very low level of oxygen. So in a situation where an organism doesn't have enough access to oxygen, if it's an organism that relies on oxygen, there's a whole cascade of physiological responses to that hypoxia. And Dr. Wilmore's lab tries to understand the genetic underpinnings of that. Dr. Rosalind Dakin and her group study the biology of flight, and she focuses a lot of her work on hummingbirds. So the department's actually building a lab for Dr. Dakin's group, because she's also a fairly new member of the faculty. They're building a lab where she can take hummingbirds into captivity and fly them in the lab to understand how they respond to different challenges in a entirely humane way and with no harm to the hummingbirds. And she also studies animal behavior, and she's interested, for example, in understanding animal social networks. So if you have a group of animals living out in the wild of a particular species, how are they interacting, and is it random, or are some of them more likely to interact with each other? Do they have long-term relationships? And she uses a whole range of really interesting statistical modeling techniques to build sort of a map of the social network of the different species. Dr. Lenore Ferrig is an extremely well-known, internationally recognized expert in landscape ecology and how wildlife use different habitats and the effects of habitat fragmentation on wildlife. And habitat fragmentation is just what happens when we take a patch of, let's say, forest, let's say one of the forests that Dr. Cullingham is studying, and we split it up into little tiny patches, for example, by putting a network of roads through the forest. So Dr. Ferrig's really interested in understanding how wildlife respond to those kinds of changes. Dr. Ken Story is also an internationally recognized expert in the physiological response of animals to hibernation and to freezing, and understanding how some animals are able to tolerate freezing and some are not. And he does this through a whole range of studies out in the wild, but also in an experimental situation. So for example, he's brought ground squirrels into captivity and put them in a situation that mimics hibernation so that they go into this sort of deep, slow state, and then tried to understand all of the physiological responses behind that. Dr. Jenny Bruin studies diabetes and islet biology. And for those of you who are interested in pursuing a health science career, either in medicine or in a related field, Dr. Bruin's research is probably a good place for you to start. If you decide to join the department. So she studies the pathogenesis of diabetes and beta cell biology and the impact of environmental pollutants on diabetes development. And then Dr. Bruce McKay, who's currently the chair of the department, studies genomic instability and cancer biology. So he's studying how damage to DNA affects expression of genes that are coded by that DNA. And then he works to understand how that information can be used to develop more effective treatments and therapies for cancer patients. Dr. Myron Smith studies fungi and also antifungal elements that can help combat harmful fungi. There's a whole experiment going on the desk right outside my office door. There's a long hallway with a big, long workbench in it. And the students working with Dr. Smith at the moment have lined up all of their different experiments on the bench, and I get to watch what's happening. So they're growing a number of different plants, and then some of them are exposed to pathogenic fungi and some are not, and some are being treated and some are not. And I admit that it is the highlight of my day every day to come in and take a look at how those plants are doing. Dr. Owen Rowland's lab works on plant biotechnology. So they're looking at how plants are producing different enzymes and different oils, and how different, sorry, let me make a sentence, and how those can be leveraged to produce drought-resistant crops that can provide food even in drought-heavy areas. Dr. Alex Wong's lab is studying experimental molecular evolution and antibiotic resistance, and he's really interested in pathogen genomics, and his group has been very involved in the response to COVID-19 in Ottawa and in helping to track the prevalence of the virus that causes COVID-19. And Dr. Heath Macmillan's lab studies adaptations to extreme and changing environments. So they use, again, physiological approaches to understand how temperature impacts species at very extreme temperatures. So if you have a species that's trekking along and it's doing okay, and individuals are able to cope with a particular, you can call it a thermal envelope, right? There's a space, a range of temperatures that a species can tolerate. And if you get outside of that, at some point you hit the species thermal limits, right? So Dr. Macmillan's group is trying to understand what happens right at those limits, how species are able to cope with very hot or very cold temperatures. Something that is special about Carleton, in particular, is that we have a huge range of adjunct faculty through the region. So adjunct faculty are scientists who work somewhere else, but are part of the department as well. So their main job is not working as a professor. They may be government research scientists, they may work in industry, they may work in NGOs, but they're adjunct in the department, and that means that they're available to come and lecture in a class where they have something helpful to contribute. They're available to supervise or co-supervise capstone projects. And if you decide to pursue a degree in biology and go on to graduate studies, they're also available to supervise graduate projects. And so, for example, we have the National Wildlife Research Center that's directly attached to the Department of Biology, physically on campus, where there's a whole range of researchers who work with Environment and Climate Change Canada, based right there. And the proximity of those researchers to the department makes it really easy to build meaningful and exciting collaborations with a whole range of people. There's also the experimental farm in Ottawa. So that's the picture on the right there. And apart from being a really nice place to go for a walk right next to campus, which is also helpful, there's a range of agricultural experiments going on there that biology students can get involved in as well. So I want to finish by talking a little bit about employment and where people who get biology degrees can end up working, because it's very important that you're keen and excited about the things that you pursue in your undergraduate studies. And you also want to know that there are job opportunities for you when you finish. So there's a whole range of careers you can pursue with a degree in biology. You can work in a research laboratory, especially if you pursue something like the biology and biotechnology specialization. So there are biologists working in the laboratories that are doing COVID testing right now, for example. There are biologists working in food safety laboratories. There's a whole range of laboratory positions available. You can go into medicine, you can go into healthcare adjacent fields. So you can work in a hospital as a doctor or a pharmacist, or you can go on to pursue a degree in nursing if that's the type of healthcare that you become interested in. And these are all ways to apply a biology degree. So this would be the right place to start if you then want to go on into health sciences. You can work for a government agency. So this is just I'm not going to read you the whole list because that's probably mind-numbing, but these are some examples of the government agencies in which biologists can work. And just looking at the abbreviations that you may not be familiar with, the CFIA is the Canadian Food Inspection Agency, and the NWRC, again, is the National Wildlife Research Center. And then you can work in NGOs and you can work with industry. So there's, for example, a whole range of consulting positions that become available if you have a biology degree. in healthcare and environmental sciences, in conservation work. And some of the NGOs that people might end up working with include things like Pollution Probe or the Wildlife Conservation Society, or a whole range of NGOs working for sustainable development across the globe to try and improve people's quality of life. And all of that work requires a good understanding of biology. And finally, if you decide you really love the university experience, you can keep working in a university, which is what Dr. Cullingham and I have done. So I think that brings us to our next poll everywhere. We just wanted to ask you why you think you might consider a biology degree from Carleton. I'm trying to find my...
Well, I'm happy to see nobody said C yet, but
I admit I considered pushing the button just to be difficult.
I did as well.
So I think that brings us to the end of our part of the presentation. But we'd like to answer any questions that you have. So I know there are some in the chat and the Q&A already. And sorry, before we start answering questions, I also want to take the opportunity to say that you can email the biology department with specific questions if you're interested in applying. They'll be able to help you work your way through the application process and answer any questions that are specific to you and your own qualifications so far and whether you meet the requirements. And the biology admission staff are extremely friendly and they're ready to help. So please don't hesitate to email them if you have particular questions. So
yeah, there's a couple questions here about, what's the best pre-med degree and what would you recommend for pre-med? And really, when you're doing pre-med, so when I did my undergrad, I was thinking about pre-med as well. And I think the most important thing is you take a degree that you have some interest in. I mean, the most important thing is that you're engaged and you're getting good marks. So you want to pick the degree that has all the prereqs for pre-med, but something you really like. It's hard to do a pre-med degree if you don't like it. So I would recommend something like that. Is biotechnology an advised pre-med? I don't know if it's an advised pre-med, but if that's something that interests you, then I'd recommend taking it because pre-med's really hard and it's better to be in a program that you really like. So if pre-med doesn't work out, you always have option A and option B. And so that's why when I was thinking about pre-med back in the day, I looked at a program I really liked. I took molecular biology and genetics. And funny, I'm now a population geneticist. So the program I took really helped guide me and develop what I actually really wanted to do. And it didn't actually turn out to be pre-med. There's a question about what do you get to learn in the biotech program? Biotech program's really great because they have some really applied courses where they actually take you through developing your own biotech business as a group. So you'll actually learn a little bit about like how to develop a business and manage that kind of development. And so that's, I know, one of the courses that they do. And they also do some really applied things like making honey and making beer, because those are all biotechnology tools that we use. How much time? Oh, what does a first year schedule look like? Christina, do you have any thoughts about that?
Sure, yeah. And I guess I'm going to start by saying that it is not unusual for first year students to feel like the experience is a little overwhelming. So wherever it is that you end up going and whatever you decide to pursue, if you end up getting started and feeling like it's a little overwhelmed and you're just not sure what to do, the biology department has an undergraduate biology student society that you can join to meet people, to connect with other people in your courses. There's a whole range of programs available to help you succeed. So if you, and this is true for other schools and other departments as well, I just can't speak to the specifics. So it's important to know going in that it's going to be a little bit different to what you're used to in high school, and that's okay. and you can do it, but it's going to be a little different. So there's a learning curve. The main reason that it feels different is that nobody's really checking up on whether you're attending classes or whether you're keeping up in the same way that you might have been used to in high school. So you learn to keep up in a more self-motivated way than you may have been doing up to now. And you're, I'm sure, all ready to do that. But it can feel a little bit different and unnerving at the beginning. So you get your schedule, you have your courses that you've signed up for. You need to plan to attend all of them to do well, because it can get really hard to catch up once you get behind. But if you're able to attend all of the classes, then they're set up to help you succeed and pick up the information that you need in a reasonable way as you go along. You can expect to spend probably 2 to 3 hours a week per course in a lecture. The number of hours depends on the particular course. And then you can expect to spend somewhere between 1 and 4 hours, depending on the course, in a lab or a seminar session. And those are the more hands-on activities where you get a chance to work with smaller groups and you're directly working on a problem together and trying out some of the new ideas and skills that you've learned from the lectures. And those get taught by the course instructor, sometimes a lab coordinator, and a set of teaching assistants or TAs who are usually graduate students who are hired to help teach the course. So the involvement usually is that the course instructor runs the lectures. So that's usually one of the professors in the department. Sometimes it'll be a senior graduate student who's really ready to teach their own course. And then the lab sessions are usually run by a lab coordinator who's had tons of experience helping first years succeed in their lab sessions, and then a set of TAs who are also there to answer your questions. So there's lots and lots of support. You just need to come ready to put the hard work in. There is also homework time. So that's going to be a set of readings usually that you're assigned to do. And that's sometimes where the time management challenges start to become a thing, and where you can, from the beginning, really practice making sure that you're keeping up with the readings, reaching out quickly if you find you're getting stuck with something, so that the course instructor and lab coordinator and TAs can help you get unstuck and help you get to the end of the semester ready to finish the course and do really, really well. Does that kind of answer your question, Zoe? If there's something I didn't answer, Zoe, please just drop it in the chat for us. Awesome. And then I think the next one is about changing programs if you realize it's not for you. Are you okay if I go ahead with this one?
Or I can.
It is very normal not to be certain what you want to do as you leave high school and move into your undergraduate studies. So pursue the things that you are interested in. It is a good idea to be thoughtful about what career options are available at the end of that path and whether those are also for you, because you do want to be able to find work and, take care of yourself. But it's very common to start a program thinking, yes, I am going into medicine, and then halfway through realize actually you're just fascinated by statistics. And that's okay. And it's also common to go into a program thinking, I am fascinated by, biotechnology, and then at the end of it realize that actually you absolutely want to pursue medicine. You're not making the final decision for your career now. You're making the best one you can do now. And like Dr. Cullingham said, you may find that something else really calls to you, and then you may end up somewhere else. That's okay. So don't feel like this is a make it or break it decision. It is not.
Not at all. One of my honors students started in engineering and switched over to biology after the first year because they just hated it. And now they love it. They love biology, all of the things about biology. But I think Dr. Davey made the best point, is that this decision does not pave your whole career road. If you had have told me when I started my undergrad that I was going to be a professor, I would have laughed in your face because I wouldn't have even known what really that meant.
So we have a question from Ryan about whether they teach how to apply CRISPR in biotechnology, and I will admit that I don't know, because that's a little out of the field that I work in, and so I'm not certain. Do you know, Dr. Cullingham?
Yeah, I mean, with CRISPR, and the biotech thing is actually a really cool tool because, you know, biotech encompasses a lot of things, and some of that might be food production. And so we can use CRISPR tools to improve food production. So we can use, you know, that gene editing method to say, hey, let's make, well, like if we talk about genetically modified organisms, let's make a rice carry a different nutrient, like golden rice that we've seen in the past, carry a nutrient that populations are deficient that rely on rice. So so CRISPR is a really important technique that can be used in that kind of biotechnology way, and like improving food crops, improving resiliency of plants to pests. I mean, I can't use it in my species because you just can't CRISPR a pine tree. But there's lots of different ways we can use CRISPR for those kind of biotechnology applications. I don't know if that quite answered your question, but hopefully that was helpful.
There's a question from Keegan about what a job in biology at Carleton looks like while also studying. So whether a research or lab assistant job.
That is a great question.
Yeah.
There are lots of different opportunities, Keegan. The first one is students who complete their first year with good academic standing, so over 80%, are invited by the faculty, like the dean's office, to apply for a dean's summer research internship. So these are paid internships throughout your first summer after finishing your first year. They are competitive, so you have to apply and you have to have a professor to support you. But in that, you get to, you know, work in a professor's lab and help them do their research. So those are really cool opportunities. So if you do have good academic standing and get that invite, take that opportunity, because that's really great. I've had some DSRI students in my lab. There's also things like iCurious programs where you can, there are also short internships, you know, 10 hours a week that you work with a professor on a particular research topic. So if you find somebody who's doing something really that speaks to you, you can contact them about those opportunities. There is SAP, which is Students as Partners in Teaching. And so the SAP program, you can help a professor help develop some of their course materials. So if you're really interested in science education and STEAM education, then you can take those opportunities as well. So those are some of the like programs, but there's also opportunities where professors are looking for field research help or somebody to help take care of plants in a greenhouse. So there are these types of opportunities, and it's best to be as involved with the department as you can be, to know about them and to be informed about them. So I do recommend all of you, if you do choose whatever department or program you choose, to really get engaged with your department and your professors, and it'll really help you in your career and making your decisions. Any other questions?
So it looks like we're all well right now at the moment, and all the questions answered. Just again, for the students, I just wanted to let you know that I put some links over in the chat section for a lot of your questions. So questions about what degree you can take for a pre-medical degree. Carleton has a specific page on the website specifically for this question. Same thing about knowing more about the first year course selection guides and what exactly you can take. Some of the links in the chat you might want to bookmark and go back to them later for reference, because they have that important information that you want to know about. Again, this is not the end of the conversation, my friends. Oh, no. You can always stay in contact with us at biology@carleton.ca, and the different links that are posted in the chat to check out the biology website. Thanks to all of you for taking the time to join us right now, and hope you enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you, Professor Davey, Professor Cunningham, for being here to give the presentation. We thoroughly appreciate it. So with that, everyone, we're drawing our presentation to a close. Have an amazing rest of your day, and we hope to see you in the near future. Thank you so much, and have a great day.